non-negotiables / principles for nutrition, training and lifestyle. So in recent weeks, what we are on October the 8th today, the Labour government last week announced that they are going to ban refillable sugary drinks from restaurants and buy and get one free on junk food. Now, on principle, these are not bad recommendations. I'm not going to speak about the moral side of things, about telling people what they can and can't do and banning certain things like that. But I do think that, again, we probably are focusing on the wrong things when it comes to weight loss and when it comes to obesity and when it comes to just living an overall general healthy lifestyle. Which is why there's a saying that I always go by: never provide a problem without providing a solution. So while I might not agree with these guidelines, let's say for instance, I thought I'd share with you today what I try and coach my clients to get towards their end position through online coaching, and then also what I also live by when I'm not in a specific phase. So whether I'm not in a phase of a gaining phase, let's say, or a fat loss phase, or a maintenance, this kind of encompasses some of the stuff that I would do maintenance without tracking. But again, there would be some changes to some of the stuff in here. But I just go through kind of the non-negotiables and principles that I like to live by on a daily and weekly basis when I'm not in a specific gaining phase or a fat loss phase, and these I'll keep by for the rest of my life. So I'm gonna list 7 down and then a bonus one. These aren't in hierarchical order or anything like that. So we're gonna start with the first one, and that is fiber. I apologize for my handwriting. It is very difficult if you are left-handed and writing on a whiteboard. So fiber intake. So what I recommend is that people aim for 14 grams for every 1,000 calories they eat. So roughly 14 grams is going to look like around 3 pieces of fruit. Now, it doesn't just have to be fruit or vegetables that you are eating. So obviously I'd suggest, you should be at least getting 2 to 3 servings of fruit and veg per day. It could be fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, oats, whole grains, anything like that. But there is a lot of good evidence that shows us that when we do have a higher dietary fiber intake, it reduces risk of all mortality, so it reduces risk of cardiovascular disease, reduce the risk of stroke, it can reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, it can help lower bad cholesterol levels, so LDLs, it can also improve blood sugar control, helps with gut health, and all sorts of things. So having a diet high in fiber is very, very, very important, which is why I would be saying everyone should be aiming for at least 14 grams of fiber for every 1,000 calories they consume. Okay, so the second one, single ingredient foods. Now, this is a little bit more of a difficult one, and I think sometimes people take this literally a little bit too to heart, but we should be trying to have a diet which is predominantly made up of single ingredient foods, because we want to be thinking about trying to have as little processed diet as possible in some senses. Now, it's important when we define processed foods, because anything processed is pretty much as soon as it's out of the ground. So for instance, like a whey protein, that is a good source of, let's say, a processed food, because it's got one of the highest biological values in terms of protein. So if we're wanting protein, then whey protein is good. It's more kind of like the browny, beigey processed foods that we want to be trying to avoid in his diet. So this is why I'd probably recommend as trying to have a diet which is high in single ingredient foods. Now, again, I do like to give objective measurements to a lot of these. So what I would probably say is something like an 80-20% split. So let's say like 80% of your diet should be single ingredient foods, and then the other remaining 20% should be stuff that's a little bit more, let's say, less nutritious. Okay, point number 3, I don't know why I wrote that a little bit smaller, so hopefully you can read it, but it is 8,500 to 10,000 plus weekly average steps. So what does this mean? Look, I know it's very difficult for a lot of people who sit at a desk, especially if you've got family, kids, you're a carer, you've got other commitments. Trying to get 10,000 steps per day is going to be difficult. Now, there is a lot of positive, in fact, there's a lot of positive research that shows that once we're getting above that 10,000 steps, again, as we start to age, it does tend to improve a lot of our health markers, and again, reduces mortality, and so on and so on. There is some research that says it's around the 8,500, 9,200 steps. So I've just put somewhere from 8,500 to 10,000 plus steps. Look, there's going to be people who argue against it, and I completely get that. And some people who say that they can't do it. But what I would say is the more you can do, the better. okay? And even if in, let's say, 10 years time, some research came out saying that it has to be 5,000 steps or something like that, which I very much doubt it's going to be, because there is quite a few systematic reviews saying this now. But if there was, then it's not going to be a negative thing. Like, you trying to do more steps and be more active is never going to be a bad thing. So unless it's really impacting upon your time that you can give to your family or whatever it is. So I would very, very much encourage most people who are watching this now to be thinking about, from today, trying to at least get to, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, your 8,500 to 10,000 plus steps. Now, why do I say on a weekly basis? Well, look, for people who are watching this, you might have 1 or 2 days per week, or you might have, Monday to Friday, which are hectic, which are crazy, and you're never going to get up to that, say, 10,000 number. But if you can get to, let's say, 7,000 or 8,000 or whatever it is, then you could use the weekend to get out for a huge walk, maybe get like 14, 16,000 steps into something like that. And look, it's going to kind of bump up that average for the week. So I think having a weekly average step target rather than the daily step target can be a little bit easier for some people, which is why I'm recommending for number 3, 8,500 to 10,000 plus weekly average steps. Point number 4, resistance training 3 to 6 times per week. Now, remember, if you are watching this video, this is not aimed at for you specifically. This is general guidelines across the board for what I would say for people. Obviously, if you've got a physique goal, if you're a bodybuilder, if you're a power lifter, if you're competing in CrossFit or whatever it is, okay, obviously that's going to be different. You might be wanting to train 5 times per week, 6 times per week, whatever it is, 7 times per week. And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But as a general guideline, I would say that most people need to be getting into the gym at least 3 times per week. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you all the benefits from resistance training. And if you're not doing it now, you should start as soon as possible. Because again, just looking at the long-term studies, especially as we start to age, especially as we start to experience things called like sarcopenia, which is where we start to lose our muscle mass. I think it's from the age of 60, or it might be 40. I'd have to double check on that one. But it's one or the other, where we start to lose X amount every single year. I think it is 60. Now, we can't completely offset that, but we can certainly do our best to try and give ourselves a bigger buffer. So if we get, I'm not talking to be an elite level bodybuilder, but if we can get a bigger set of muscle mass, well, then as we start to age, we've got more to work back from, which is going to help us, if we are getting injured, if we're trying to get out of bed, and all these little things that we don't think about in the future. If we do it now, you're going to thank yourself later for doing it. So then if we do start to lose that muscle mass, then it's going to come down and not be as much. So for me, I would definitely be recommending that you need to be performing resistance training at least 3 times per week. But obviously then if you do have, as I mentioned, have a physique goal, you want to be getting in there more. Okay, point number 5, cardiovascular exercise, at least 1 to 2 times per week. Now, this is probably one where I'm a little bit guilty of. I did it for, obviously my training recently. I've switched from CrossFit back into more resistance style training within the gym. But for probably those 4 to 5 years of me doing CrossFit, I was definitely doing cardiovascular exercise 4 to 5 times a week, probably. Cardiovascular exercise doesn't have to be you going out for a 5K run. It could be you doing some kind of like circuit training, some kind of CrossFit workout or something like that, whether it's you sat on the bike. For some people, it's going to be a brisk walk as well. Like, don't box yourself in too much, feeling as though you have to go out for a 60-minute run or something like that for your cardiovascular exercise. Again, where you're at now, whatever you do, if you're not doing any cardiovascular training, if you go out for a brisk walk and you're getting out of breath towards the end of it, then for me that counts as cardiovascular exercise. Obviously, you then need to keep building upon that to make sure that we're getting the same benefits from it. But yeah, I would definitely be recommending that most people need to be doing cardiovascular exercise at least 1 to 2 times per week. Okay, I'll then put for point number 6, protein intake of 1.5 grams per week. Now, that is still relatively high for people who don't do resistance training. This is for if you are going to be, then performing at least 3 training sessions per week. You want to be getting, I would say, for most people, around 1.5 grams per kilo per week. Obviously, if you are a heavier individual and we're talking, 200 grams plus of protein, then it's going to be a little bit difficult. Or if you are, let's say in some cases, a really small female trying to get up to, like when you're getting well past 100 grams of protein is going to be difficult to try and fit it with the rest of your calories. So there are going to be some exceptions to that rule. But As a rule, we want to be kind of, especially if we are resistance training now at least 3 times per week, we want to be recovering from our sessions. We obviously want to be trying to grow new muscle mass from our sessions. And overall, there's a lot of positive benefits that we see from having a higher protein intake, which is why I would say at 1.5 grams. Now, obviously, if you are not doing any resistance training, or if you're training 1 times per week, then you probably might not have to be at 1.5 grams. You could probably be a little bit lower, more towards the actual dietary recommendations, which I believe are about, is it a gram, maybe even a little bit less, maybe 0.9 grams, again, which I would probably say is a little bit on the lower side, but yeah, I would be trying to think about trying to get a higher protein intake in your diet. Okay, and the last one, and again, some people are going to disagree with this one. Sorry about my scruffy handwriting, but that is recording your weekly average weight. Now, a lot of these, pretty much 6 of these, are backed with a lot of evidence, which I've spoken about, which is what I like to give a lot of my recommendations off. In terms of recording your weekly average weight, I'm sure there are some studies out there about weighing yourself and recording your weekly average weight. I've just not looked into them now. But personally, from someone who has been weighing themselves for how many years now? It's got to be at least 15, 16 years or something like that. This is, I would arguably say, one of the easiest ways to control your weight. So how do you record your weekly average weight? Well, it'll be a case of either weighing yourself every single day or weighing yourself multiple times per week, adding those together and dividing by how many times you weighed yourself. So let's say you did 4 weigh-ins across the week. You'd take those 4 weigh-ins, add them together, divide by 4. That would give you your weekly average weight. And that is what you track on a weekly basis. It allows you to, should we say, nip it in the bud early and stop it if we start to see our weight rising too quickly. So if we can see from 1 month to the next that we've gained like 1 kilo, 2 kilos, well, okay, we can think about trying to pull those calories back. And if you're not tracking your nutrition intake, which you'll notice I've not mentioned on any of these, then that could be a case of, right, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to think about skipping breakfast this week. I'm just going to think about cutting down on my snacks this week or for the next 2 weeks or whatever it is until you've got your weight back in check. So I think that we need to try and remove that emotional attachment from the scales, and we just need to get used to weighing yourself and just seeing it as, look, it's an objective number. It's going to fluctuate like mad day to day. It's the weekly average that counts, and I'm going to be comparing it on a month by month basis if we're just looking at maintenance and making sure that it's not rising. And if it is, that's where I'm just going to cut out some of my food and just take that emotional attachment out of the scale and get used to jumping on the scales. Okay, the last one. Now, I've added this as a bonus, and I put sleep 7 to 9 hours. The reason why I put it as a bonus, again, look, there's going to be a lot of good evidence and research out there about sleep. It's not my area of expertise. The exercise, nutrition side of things is more where I spend a lot more of my time researching. So in terms of the sleep side of things, look, these are general guidelines that I'm saying that most people should be getting. Again, when we start looking at people who are deficient in the sleep or not getting good sleep quality, that's kind of where we do see a lot of negative things come from that, especially later on in life, and not also that as well. Sleep is going to be the foundation for a lot of these things. If we're not sleeping well, we're going to have low energy through the day. If we have low energy through the day, we're going to turn to snacking. Our motivation might be low, so we might not be looking at training. There's all sorts of these things that are kind of connected from sleep. So I would say sleep is the baseline thing. Now, I've put 7 to 9 hours. I'm sure there's people out there, I think like Jocko Willink, I think even like Margaret Thatcher spoke about how they spoke for, you know, like 4 hours or something like that on a day-to-day basis. I believe I did hear a while back there is some kind of gene or something that is in certain people that can allow them to sleep for, you know, 4 hours a day, or a very short period. So I'm not going to set it as a guideline because that could be specific to you, but just making sure that we're getting good, adequate sleep. So just to summarize, these are the non-negotiables principles that I'm going to live by forever. There might be some added to this, there might be some taken away from this, but these are, if you are doing these things, you are going to be ahead of most people for your health and longevity. So fiber intake, 14 grams every 1,000 calories. What does that look like? Having 2 to 3 pieces of fruit and veg, let's say, for every 1,000 calories you're going to consume. Primarily, your diet should be made up of single ingredient foods, ideally 80%, and then 20% going to less nutritious foods. We should be looking to get at least 8,500 to 10,000 plus on our weekly average steps. So don't forget, if through the week you have a day that's a little bit lower, then you can obviously use the weekend to make those steps up. But I would look at your weekly average steps rather than the daily. We should be looking to resistance train at least 3 times, ideally up to 6 times per week. We should be performing cardiovascular exercise anywhere from 1 to 2 times per week. We should be looking for a protein intake of 1.5 grams per kilo in body weight if we are resistance training 3 times per week. Obviously, if we're not hitting that 3 times per week, then it could be potentially a little bit less. And we want to be recording our weekly average weight, so we're keeping on top of it so it doesn't get out of hand. And we want to be getting good, adequate sleep. A general guideline is sleep 7 to 9 hours. Any questions on any of this, guys? If you disagree with them, obviously I'm sure there's others that could be added in there, such as meditation and journaling and stuff, which I do, but kind of these are the ones that I've stuck to based on exercise and nutrition, which is more the area that I do a lot of my research into. Any questions, guys? Please pop them in the comments below or shoot me a message on Instagram.